Hey guys, hi! Welcome back to my channel. I was trying to. Yeah. Hey guys, hi! Welcome back to my channel. How are you today? If you're new here, hi, I'm Kriti and I review books for no reason and talk about them incessantly. Thank you for being here. If you can ignore the flying curtain in the background, I cannot switch the fan off. It is so hot, I swear. I know you can do it. Try. So yeah guys, today I'd be doing a July mid-cap of sorts where I talk about the books that I plan to read in the month of July and how far am I, what have I learned from the book so far or not. So basically we'll be talking about the July TBR but a little late. Yeah, and if you can ignore the mess that my hair is and the mess that my life is. Hey guys, thank you for being here and let's get started. Today we'll be doing a July TBR of sorts but in the middle of the month. So I'm planning to call it like a July mid-cap where we'll review what I've studied, what I've read so far, what I'm planning to read before the month ends, and what are my thoughts on the currently reading books. Yeah, books, that's what I wanted to say. So yeah, I will start with the first book that I'm currently reading. It's Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I'm personally a fan of John Green's writing because I don't even like reading on mobile phones or on electronic devices. But I finished The Fault in Our Stars, Looking for Alaska, Paper Towns, all of them on my phone because I was so engrossed in the story. And I just love how the way he uses metaphor and how the way he uses language in general. So I still remember this line from Looking for Alaska where Miles, I think the protagonist's name was, and he's comparing Alaska and himself to rain, which I think is a very clever way of getting your point across. If people were rain, I was a drizzle and she was a hurricane. And oh my god, that is why I love reading so much. This is the reason why I read, because I get to come across such gems of this language. And yeah, so that's why I picked this book up, Turtles All the Way Down. I think it was published, I actually don't remember when it was published. I didn't even bother to check. My bad. I'm so sorry. So yeah, I've been trying to read this book. Special focus on trying because I literally have been trying to read this book and I have not been able to finish it, to be really honest. It's an interesting book. It follows the story of Asa Holmes, a girl who has had her share of mental diseases. She's battling anxiety, an obsessive compulsive disorder, and the way she talks about her anxiety is also very interesting. She also spews random facts at you in the middle of the book out of nowhere, and that is how I learned that the smell of your sweat is not from the sweat itself but from a bacteria which eats it. And so yeah, this book picks up a little slow for me, and then it gets into the story of Asa, her friends, and how she's trying to rekindle her friendship with her long lost friend called Davis Pickett, who's the son of an absconded millionaire. So the way John Green writes is absolutely fantastic. I love it. The story in itself, I'm not too sure how strong or powerful it is, and which I will know because I'm still on chapter 10 and I have almost 100 pages to go. I don't know if I'm excited about it, and I have a paperback, and I think the biggest red flag for any book can be when there is nothing written on the jacket about the book itself. The book talks about the critical acclaim for The Fault in Our Stars on the jacket, and I do not know why is that. So yeah, we'll find out. I will give this book a detailed review much later, but for now this is what I'm currently reading. Moving on to the next book, which is Solitaire by Alice Oseman. I heard about Alice Oseman on Jack Edwards' YouTube channel. Big fan, of course. And then I started getting into her writing, and oh my god, this woman is a genius. I love every single bit about this book. For me, again, it picks up a little slow. It's the story of this teenager called Victoria. The only thing that matters to her in her life is usually her blog, on which she writes and like expresses her opinions. She is not too interested in anything else. Like nothing interests her. She's a little detached. So the book touches upon the theme of mental health again, depression, a little bit of anxiety. Wow, motorbike, calm down. Sorry for that. So yeah, the book touches upon the themes of anxiety, depression, eating disorders, that too so seamlessly that, and you won't be able to pick it, like once you pick it up, you won't be able to keep it down. I finished it in one day because of the beautiful way that it has been written. And I could relate to Tori a lot, not because I'm a chronic pessimist, like that's what she says about herself on the jacket. My name is Tori Spring. I like to sleep and I like to blog. Last year I had friends, things were very different, I guess, but that's all over now. Now there's Solitaire and Michael Holden. I don't know what Solitaire are trying to do, and I don't care about Michael Holden. I really don't. And she really doesn't care about too many people, and she really doesn't care about too many things in her life. She's not your regular teenager. And you will understand once you read this book why is that. Because in the beginning you'd be like, why is she the way she is? But as the story progresses, you get to know that there is a deep underlying problem there. She's suffering from depression and nobody around her knows about it. It's very touching in a way, and on the cover it says The Catcher in the Rye for the digital age. I think it's only because they share the name Holden. But yeah, must read. If I could give it any stars, I would give it 5 out of 5 because I really love it. And moving on to the third book, which is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I don't know how to pronounce their name. But yeah, it's a tiny book, to be honest, and I'm going to be really absolutely upfront about it. I've been trying to finish this book for over a decade now. Yeah, I had this book for like I've had this book for almost 10 years now. Look at the condition of this book. But I have been unable to. I don't know why. Maybe I don't relate to Holden too much, which by the way is the protagonist of the book. And when I was reading about it, Salinger actually intended it for adults, but then it became like the holy Bible for adolescents. There's a lot of filthy language in here, which I really don't mind, but I'm still trying to understand what it is about, and I'm not too deep, to be honest. The book looks tiny, but the text is, I don't know if you can see it, but the text is supremely tiny, and I've been having a difficult time focusing, but I'm trying. So yeah, this is on my TBR for this month. I really want to finish The Catcher in the Rye and understand what the hell all the hype is about, because I don't get it. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. The next book that I read this month, I don't know if that's a book because it's super tiny. It's like a short story, Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I know like Kafka is on, like he's on League of His Own, which is amazing, but I found this story excruciatingly slow. It is so slow, and there are so many details which could have been avoided, but I guess that's how Franz Kafka writes. And the interesting thing is, before the story starts, the publishers actually gave a little synopsis of Franz Kafka's life, which helped me understand the story in a much better way, because he had issues with authority. He was very afraid of he was scared of his father because of the way he's treated him over the past. And which is very interesting, because that's how, when I started reading the story with that knowledge in my head, I was able to understand why, whatever was happening, why it was happening. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have read it or heard of it. But yeah, the story is basically about a man who's a travel salesman, and one day he just gets up and he's transformed into an insect, and how he's trying to navigate through the life. It has a very sad ending, to be really honest. Ooh! I say to be really honest a lot. So yeah, and I like this whole Kafka-esque writing, and I know it's because the way he writes, it's very magical realism, and that's how Murakami also writes, and he's one of my favorite authors. So I really enjoy this alternate reality, but I don't know if I enjoy this story as much because of the way it was written. Maybe it's just me, but yeah, that is it for Metamorphosis for me. The next book that I will be talking about is The Game of Desire by Shannon Boodram. Shane Broody is actually a very popular YouTuber who talks about relationships and sex, and she's a sexologist. And I was actually really fascinated by her channel because she spoke about open relationships, she spoke about individuality, and she spoke about a lot of other things, and which really interested me. The Game of Desire is not actually about that. The Game of Desire is actually like sort of like okay, so basically it's a story of 4 to 5 women that she's coaching for dating, and that was interesting in its own because you get to learn like these women and their learn about these women and their personalities, and it's written very simply, so you don't actually have to use too much of your brains for it. But the most important part for me in the whole book that I took away from it has an interesting perspective on the objective evaluation of your relationship, of your past relationships. When in one chapter she says, like, now you've established the kind of person that you want, the kind of person that you do not want, and you're trying to become the person that you want to attract, or sort of something like that. Now look back at your old relationships and try and figure out why did it not work out. And whenever we do that, whenever I did that exercise, my exes were to blame all the time. And this book actually had an impact on me, so to say, because it made me look within and understand that maybe you were not alright, girl. Like, I know I wasn't completely right all the time, but my perceptions of me in my relationships was stemming from because they brought out the worst in me. But yeah, this book changed that for me. I actually took a breather and realized, oh my god, I was doing some horrible things as well in my relationship. So yeah, it was refreshing to know that, and I'm trying to read one non-fiction or a self-help book along with my other books every month. So this book was that for me. So interesting, quite interesting, even if you're not looking out to date, because I didn't go with any expectations for this book. I was like, oh Masi, maybe I should just give it a read. And when I read it, it helped me a little bit. So yeah, what is there to lose, quite literally. So yeah, that was the other book, and I'm as always referring to my notes because gotta eat some badams. Anyway, so next book that I'm planning to finish this month is Trip, Psychedelics, Alienation and Change by Tao Lin, and it's sort of a memoir, and the jacket is full of praise for Tao Lin's writing. A superbly researched, moving and formally inventive quest for re-enchantment, and Tao Lin's most compelling and profound book yet. Sheila Heti, author of How Should a Person Be? Yeah, okay. So on the jacket of the book, it says, while reeling from one of the most creative but at times self-destructive outpourings of his life, Tao Lin discovers the strange and exciting work of Terence McKenna. McKenna, the leading advocate of psychedelic drugs since Timothy Leary, became for Lin both an obsession and a revitalizing force. In Trip, he charts his recovery from pharmaceutical drugs, his surprising and positive change in worldview, and his 4-year engagement with some of the hardest questions. Why do we make art? Is the world made of language? What happens when we die? And is the imagination more real than the universe? In exploring these ideas and detailing his experiences with psilocybin, DMT, LSD, salvia, and cannabis, Lin takes readers on a trip through nature, his own past, psychedelic culture, and the unknown. Very interesting, IMO. But yeah, this is obviously the second non-fiction book that I wanted to read. But the way, and I'm not too far in the book, Tao Lin talks about alienation, he talks about the meme culture, which is not actually the meme culture that I'm referring to. But yeah, once I finish this book, I'm planning on doing an in-depth review, so watch out for that. But interesting book for sure on the recreational use of psychedelics and the positive effect of psychedelics and why should they not be banned. I don't know if I'm in support of that motion or not. I will form an opinion once I finish this book. Yes. After that, the next book that I'm planning to read is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, and this is a trilogy where I think she talks about like 3 sisters, and Eve Brown is the youngest of them. And I'm reading that book currently, and it's interesting so far, right? So I was trying to stay away from her romance for a while because I thought I was too good for it. Who reads romance? Romance for teenagers. And to be really honest, I think I will read YA fiction for as long as I'm alive because it is the most exciting category in literature for me. It's ever evolving, it's so inclusive, it's so diverse, and everybody has their own experiences. So when they write about it, it's fantastic. I want to read all of it. Like, I don't care how old I am. I'm still gonna go grab something from the YA shelf, you know what I mean? Anyway, so yeah, Act Your Age, Eve Brown is about Eve Brown, who's 25 or 26, and she comes from a wealthy family, of course, and of course because of the other books in the trilogy. Unlike her sisters, Eve Brown hasn't like made a name for herself yet, so parents like pull her out of the trust fund and say that, hey, listen, you have 1 year and take this time to explore and do something on your own before we decide for you to do something, or something like that. I don't remember, I'm sorry. And then Eve Brown by chance ends up getting a job at a bed and breakfast where she meets Jacob, who's the owner of the bed and breakfast, and Jacob is autistic. And I love the representation in the book. There is representation of mental health, people of color, privileged people. It's interesting. It's very it is of course YA, and it is a romance novel at the end of the day. I'm not done with it yet, but I'm super excited to know how it pans out. And the last book that I read this month is that I read because I've already read it and some of them are still TBR. The last book on this list, safer, much better. The last book on this list is We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I am extremely sorry if I'm pronouncing that name wrong. Should I research? Should. Yeah, so this book is actually a TED talk turned into like a sort of a journal. So when you read the book, it's mostly like a journal entry of sorts, and it's not directed at anybody. It's sort of like notes from her TED talk, but it's very light read. It's like 52 pages at max, and it's written in a very simple way where the author Chimamanda focuses on how like we have been raised not to be feminists, especially in her own country. And I could relate because I'm not from the same country, but I also come from a Southeast Asian country where we are taught gender roles way more, like with way more emphasis than anything else in our lives. And there's this paragraph in the book where she talks about we are doing a great disservice to boys when we raise them to be people who don't cry, or people who don't display emotions, or people who have to be the breadwinner, because everybody should be in touch with their emotions. And why not? It's a very quick read, it's very interesting, and she doesn't look at feminism as something in isolation, in a bubble. It's something that we have to make a part of all of our lives for it to be able, for it to like succeed as a philosophy. And she talks about why should you be a feminist, when was she called a feminist for the first time, when did she learn the meaning of feminism. And then she talks about wage gaps, she talks about men, how they are also suffering on the account of this sexist and patriarchal society that we have created for ourselves, and which is just very interesting, which is beautiful. She covers everything and it's just 50 pages long. I highly recommend you should read it because it will give you an interesting worldview. It'll open your eyes, and that's why we read, because we learn new things, right? So yes, that is all for my July midcap. I am so excited to finish the rest of my books, some not too much. Looking at you, catch me in the rye. And I will keep you posted. Thank you for coming and hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of the day. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you for being here. Bye bye.